Krishna in the Gita says to Arjuna, I am the one who gives memories. I am also the one who wipes it out. You know that wiping out happens to everybody. Actually, everybody has these memories.
Under every video we've ever created about Yetis, your name comes up.
Is it?
Yes. Why is that?
Simply because I happened to mention that when I wanted to go to Kailash, something came in. I knew that it is a furry kind of person. The first doubt was that it's a bear, but no, it was standing like a human being. This Yeti, he said they are good people. They are not what people think and fear. He brought a herbal medicine and stuffed it into your mouth. Otherwise, you would have died.
This one is not a conversation for the skeptics. This is a conversation for the believers. But in this conversation with Sri M, a renowned author and spiritual leader, we did address skepticism and then went on to cover all of his life's experiences. There's a few guests where I know that there's 20 podcasts within this person, and Sri M is one of those. This was just the first conversation with this man. Spoke about everything from Yetis to demons to beings from other realms to the meaning of spiritual growth in terms of human existence. What's the purpose of spirituality? What's the purpose of meditation? And where do these other entities, these sci-fi style entities, even fit into the world of spiritualism? This conversation will bend your mind and then open it up. I highly recommend you try listening to the entire conversation. And I also highly recommend that you follow us on Spotify, because we're a Spotify exclusive, which means that every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This is Sri M appearing on the Ranveer show for the first time. Beautiful conversation coming your way. Shri M, I'm overwhelmed that you're on the show today. I honestly don't know where to begin this conversation with you, and I'd love to say these conversations with you because there's that much to speak to you about. All your, I want to say life's experiences, but I'm going to say soul's experiences instead. But maybe to begin our series with you, I'd love to just know what this lifetime, sir.
Like what?
Firstly, how are you today?
Today I'm good. But then I'm generally always like this, you know.
Okay.
In spite of whatever is happening, I maintain a quiet mind. And I'm very happy that you call me. I know what you do, the kind of work. So the idea is, as in the Gita, Sarvatra Samabuddhaya, which means to remain tranquil under all circumstances. So therefore, to the question, how are you? I'm okay, I'm fine.
Wow. I'm a little stumped. That's my usual starter for all these episodes. But let's begin with this lifetime. What's your earliest memory from this life?
My earliest memory in this life, in this physical body, till the age of 9, I don't remember much except what everybody remembers, normal. But after I had the unique experience of my guru, Maheshwarnath Babaji, laying his hand on my head and saying, "Samay hone par sab theek ho jayega." After that, I started having memories of before. I've had memories like, nobody has asked me this question before. I've had memories of being enclosed in some dark room, you know, as a small little embryo, powerless, not able to move, but memories flooding inside of the past. And then one day, all of a sudden, all the memories disappeared and I was out. And then I have only memories of this life till I started dwelling deep into my layers of consciousness and tracing back why this thing has happened, where did it start, how come I'm in these circumstances. This came much later. because at some point, the memories are cut off before you come out. Krishna in the Gita says to Arjuna, I am the one who gives memories. I'm also the one who wipes it out. That wiping out happens to everybody. Actually, everybody has these memories. Some discover it later, some don't discover it in this life at all. That's the only difference.
I want to take you back to that meeting with your guru. I would love for you to describe it a little bit, sir, because that's what's available about you online. If someone has not read your books, that one account is available, and it's written about how that one account was kind of the beginning of your journey in this lifetime.
Very true.
So I would also love to know a little bit about your guru and about the concept of a guru in general.
Okay. When I was 9 years old, I was born in a immigrant Muslim family from across the border into Kerala. My forefathers came as personal security guards to the Maharajas of Travancore. That's how we came here. Of course, then we got settled. Basically, I would say I'm like Keralite, if you ask me. Although I traveled a lot in the north, but I was born and brought up in Trivandrum. Trivandrum is the Thiruvananthapuram, the city of Anantasayana, Vishnu, in Padmanabha Swami temple. So when I was young, the backyard of our house was very long, very big. And many of our friends and neighbors used to come and play. By 6:30, they would have all gone home and I was alone. This happened every day almost. And then when I was about to go home, I looked far into the end of the backyard. And then I saw some very unusual person standing under the jackfruit tree. There was a jackfruit tree there, huge, big jackfruit tree. Unique because I've never seen such a person in my life. I was startled because I don't know how that person came there. Later on, I reasoned maybe he jumped on the compound wall. That part of the compound wall was a little short. But I was taken by surprise because at that age, at the age of 9, he was tall afterwards, I discovered, but then he looked very tall. And I've never seen a matted haired person in my life. His hair was all matted up here. Very fair, very tall. No upper garment except a small cloth here. And he carried a peculiar thing in his hand. Later on, I came to know it's a kamandalu. And on his neck was a garland of huge big rudraksha, which I didn't know at that time, what a rudraksha is. So when I saw that, I was wondering, who's this? Where has this guy come from now? So he gestured with his hand like this. Why? What is the natural reaction when in the evening, when it's about to get dark, a stranger calling you? That was strange looking stranger. The reaction is bolt. But I felt I must go. So I went closer to him. Then I was standing with him, not face to face because he was taller and was looking down. So he asked me, do you remember anything? I said, no, because I didn't remember. I didn't know what he was asking. Remember what? I said, no. Then he put his hand on my head. He said it in Hindi, but I'm telling you in English. He said, when the time comes, you will remember everything. Everything will be fine. And then he said, go back. So I walked back, still wondering what's happening here to me. Only thing I remember I carried with me was those big eyes of his. They were haunting me, like for many years they were there. I walked back. I know that I reached the kitchen at the back and my mother was cooking something. Now, I wanted to turn back and look. I could not. I could turn back only when I climbed the steps and went to the back door. Then I turned back. There was nobody there. So I said, but it was not a vision. It was an actual thing. Anyway, because I could still feel that hand on my head, there's something, the feeling of warmth. And I tried to tell my mother, I just couldn't talk. I could say everything except this incident. For many years it remained like that, locked. Anyway, I went inside, had something to eat. And from that day started The whole change in my life, the change in, I had never learned to meditate before. I started, how did I start? When I went to sleep that night, around midnight, I felt that somebody was waking me up. Not as if there was anybody there. Completely awake in midnight. And I felt in the navel some kind of warm feeling and a light like these things you use for Deepavali, the fireworks, that round thing that rotates. Something here was moving, and then it spread throughout the body, and there was a feeling of blissfulness. This was my first meditation and the first change that happened. It, this happened every day, every night. I wouldn't sit up because I thought if I sit up, all used to sleep in one big, in the olden days, like joint families. And so I used to lie down and do it. This went on. I started understanding many things. And then I got this desire to read about the Upanishads. And I used to go to the libraries later on as I grew up and read whatever was available to me. Books came to me unasked for many times. Um, and then my meditation started deepening. But the most interesting part was, it so happened that situations would happen where I would meet spiritual persons from all over. Situations would happen by which I would run into almost some people who are considered to be holy men, yogis, swamis in our area, in Trivandrum area. And from them I got a lot of blessings and sometimes instructions. And it went on till I reached the age of 19. I wrote my exams. And then at the age of 19, I felt that I have to move.
What kind of instructions were they giving you?
Sometimes the instructions were verbal, sometimes the instructions were non-verbal. Verbal instruction, there was one Swami Abhedananda who used to live in the fort area where the Padmanabha Swami temple is. He was not so well known, but he had a following. And I used to go there on a Saturday, Sunday, walk up from our bicycle sometimes, and he would make me sit near him. And he knew that I was doing some kind of a practice which was to do with the Kundalini and all that. I have not instructed, reading various things here and there. And he told me, oh, you don't have to do all this. Just bhakti is enough. Say the name of God, things like that. And he would insist that I had food with him and go. These are some of the verbal instructions. Sometimes I would go and, for instance, there was a man called Gopalaswami there. Gopalaswami is called Gopalapillai Swami. His name was Gopalapillai. He was actually a clerk in the accounts department in Trivandrum. But he was a very advanced yogi. He was unmarried, but he never wore any robes to wear a slag. So when I was small, at the age of 12, I used to go to a nearby house to learn mathematics. I was a little weak in mathematics. So somebody used to instruct me, one Mr. Ramaswamy. One day I went, they said, oh, today there is no class. I said, why, what happened? No, Swami has come, so there is no class. I said, which Swami has come? What? I did. Curious. Then his mother came out and said, come inside. So I went there and I saw this man sitting. Well-built man, short haircut, no sign of any Swami, nothing. His cloth was tied like this, cross belt type. And as soon as I entered, he said, in Malayalam, come here, sit down. He put his hand on my head and massage. And then he told them, very good boy, like that in Malayalam. This was these non-verbal instructions.
You feel some information went into your mind?
My mind was changing. I began to see, more than see, feel that there were things much beyond what we normally think of. that this world is not a three-dimensional world. There are other things beyond. And I also felt that my calling was to find the ultimate happiness and the ultimate infinite supreme rather than satisfy day-to-day things that we normally think of at that time. So this started happening.
I have to ask you about the journey again. We're back to age
Sure.
19.
Sure.
Usually, a teenage is like the beginning of adulthood where you actually begin to get your first few droplets of philosophy in your head and you start questioning life and purpose and these
Right,
things.
right.
Was that happening to you, or had it happened a lot earlier? And were you just, already sure about the
No, I
answers?
was not sure.
Okay.
I had some extraordinary experience, which we discussed some time back, meeting strange people, so-called strange people. They're not really strange, and getting some information and some experiences and so on. But it was at that age of 19 that I began to think seriously that I need to have a very tangible experience in these matters before I can begin to believe in them.
You wanted the
I
experience.
wanted to actually, I read by then so many textbooks talking about moksha, talking about the ultimate reality. I had a few experiences which is just ABC. But then I wanted to move, and I thought this environment where I'm staying is not going to help me. I also, deep down in my mind, had a feeling that somewhere in the Himalayas, somebody's waiting for me to teach. I know.
Specifically the Himalayas? Like you used to think about that?
Yes, some snow-clad mountain. I don't know whether snow-clad mountains where I'm walking and there's someone standing up there. This kind of thoughts used to occur. Part of it may be my desire to go to find out. And also I've read that great yogis live in them. Could be. But this was there recurring all the time. And I also felt that in this situation where I was at home, since I was the only child, the only male child in India, that's a big thing. And you're supposed to take over your family's business. And I was getting kind of like feeling that I was in a cage. I wanted to break out of that. It was a golden cage, okay? Many would have preferred to stay in the golden cage, but I wanted to break it. Cage is a cage, right? Wood or gold. So it was like a bird which can't fly. One day, I decided that I'll just go. You must understand, those days, there was no Google, there is no maps, there is no nothing. So I used to look for some time at railway guides and find out where to go to the Himalayas, where is Rishikesh, where. And one day, finally, I left. I had some money with me. And I've never traveled for such long distances on my own, but I just went. I had a lot of problems about trying to. I had some money, where to find food, how to travel in trains. It went on. And cold. I didn't realize that I needed some warm clothes and so on. I suffered a lot. Even after I reached Rishikesh by train, I suffered a lot. So I thought, let me stay in some ashram, at least look after the body. So I stayed in Divine Life Society. Swami Chidananda was the head of that society. And that I met him. I used to meet him, talk to him. But he also knew that I won't stay there. He said, you're going, I don't think you will stay here. Then one day I left and then I started walking. So from Rishikesh to Badrinath, I decided to go on foot. By the time I reached Vashishta Gufa, which is on the way, quite close, 20 kilometers away, 25, my legs were all swollen and I just couldn't. I so went to the cave. There was a Swamiji there. He died about 9 months ago. He looked after me. He said, don't go anywhere, stay. He was also from Kerala, so there was a common language and so on. He looked. And then afterwards, okay, I didn't stay a single day. I moved on. So I walked, I met a couple of people here and there, some ashrams and so on, and reached Badrinath.
You reached Badrinath. Wow.
Took me 1 month and 10 days or something, if I remember right.
Did you have any crazy experiences on the way?
Yeah, I met a couple of Swamis, and instead of some yogis, I also met some cannabis smoking guys who were not Swamis, who looked like some. All kinds of things happened to me. I met wise people who were very simple. I remember in the evening, I went into an ashram. It was a Vaishnavite sadhu, three marks everywhere. Sitting there, I went and I always made it a point to tell them the truth, who I was and what my name was, where I came from. He said, very good. So he said, Puja is over, then you have food with me. Puja was over. They went to the Ganga, did Arati, came back. Then after that, he said, come, let's have a chat. He was an elderly man. He said, good, your intentions are good, but I have to tell you something. If you take sannyas, if you renounce the world and take sannyas, you have to be very careful because you have to be sure you're ready for it. He said, if somebody is climbing up steps to go to the top of the mountain, if you fall from the first or second step, you won't get hurt. If you go up there and fall, you will not be able to recover. You'll break your limbs.
Was that a way of saying if you fail your tests once you...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So he kind of gave me some warning, like, be careful.
But what can go wrong on that journey of renouncing the world?
It can go wrong in the sense that we are not ready for it. We don't know what we are going in for. And then we find life too tough. And either you succumb to the temptation and still wear a robe, or you succumb to temptation and leave everything and come off back to the world. I think the first thing I said is worse than coming back to the world.
That you
wear the robe, but you can't live the life. Then it becomes a double life. It's better to say, okay, I can't do this and get back. So he was warning me in that kind of, that Sant Gyaneshwar in Alandi.
Yes, sir.
His father became a sannyasi while his wife was still young, and so she became pregnant and he ran off. He went off to Ganinath, his yogi. And one day Ganinath came to Alandi, and there is a tree there around which women are supposed to go around to free themselves of their troubles. So he saw a young lady going around praying, saying, I'm pregnant, please bring back the father. He stopped and he blessed her and said, Tathastu. Then he asked her, who is your husband? She described, found that he was his disciple. He never told him that he'd married. So he went and said, go back. This is not the way. So he came back. Therefore, the whole family was kind of thrown out of society. Because you became a sannyasin, then you throw away your robe and you come back. But his guru wanted him to do it. So he came back. So they were ostracized and kept out. The story is that once the Pandits were having a Vedic discussion, and by the time all the children became great yogis, including Gyaneshwar. Muktabai, the sister, also became a yogini. His brother became Nurtinath, another yogi. So one day, and Gyaneshwar was very small, very young, and he was walking. He saw the people chanting the Vedas, so he also went to join, coming from a family which knew the Vedas. They said, this is the same fellow, that sannyasin who came back. He can't be allowed here. Go off. You can't chant the Vedas. The story is that Gyaneshwar called a buffalo which was walking on the road and put his hand on the buffalo's head, and the buffalo chanted the Vedas. This is the story. We don't know. Many things are, myths and realities sometimes mixed up. But it's an example to show what. So like that, I met several people, and then I went to I reached Badrinath, where I met the Ravalji first. Ravalji, the priest of the Badrinath temple. Since the time of Adi Shankara's time, when he revived the Badri temple, he decided that the priest here has to be a Nambudri from Kerala. There was Vedic families who were selected. They have a 5-year tenure, and they are the priest. So I went and met him. I told him that I'm coming from such and such a place, and I told him honestly who I was, everything. I'm looking for a guru. I think there is some yogis in the Himalayas here in Punjab. I got the most discouraging response to this. He said you should go back because there's nobody like that here. There are ganja smoking sadhus and so on. You go back. And he also said that you're an educated fellow. Why are you wasting time here? Go back and do. I said, I listened to everything, but I said, can you find a place for me to stay for some time? He said, I will do. And he found a kutia for me across the other side of the Alkananda. So I stayed there. I used to go there for food, prasad. And I stayed. Every day, after the puja, they used to play cards there. So I was getting a little disillusioned. I have burned my bridges, and now here. So there is a place, the last village in Indian village is Mana on the border. After that, 30 kilometers, you get the Indo-Tibetan border. But the last village is Mana. So I thought maybe I will go that way because I've heard that in Vasundhara Falls and so on, there are caves where Yogi. So I took a walk in the evening. It was cold. By the time I had blankets and sweaters. Then I passed the Vyasa Gufa. There is a Vyasa Gufa there on the right side. Nobody was there. I continued, went to Mana, crossed, went on. Then it was just, I went and looked and there were some caves on the rocks, but there was nobody there and one of the cave had a door fixed and somebody had locked it and gone off. I said, okay, let's go back. I was coming, it was getting dark. That time I felt very suicidal because I thought that nothing seems to be working for me. Maybe it is because of this body. Maybe if I come back next time in a different situation, different body, it might work. So I came to the edge of Alkananda, down Mana, and I contemplated on committing suicide actually. I said, let me end maybe I'll come back with. But then I was worried that I might suffer and I was just thinking, the water rose with a big sound there. Just thinking, how many minutes do you think I'll suffer? And I was just thinking. Anyway, I said, let me meditate for a while and take a decision. So I went back to the Vyasa Gufa. I saw a fire outside. So I said, there must be somebody because when I went that side, nobody was there. I went inside and Maheshwarnath Babaji stood up.
The same guru you had met
Yeah,
when you were a
I know
child.
that eyes. That eyes were with me all the time, those big eyes. And his first response was, oh, so after wandering here and there, you come back again to me. So I told him, I will not leave you ever. And he said, we'll think about it. And laughed. So I stayed with him. 3.5 years, almost 3, I stayed with him. I wandered with him. Wherever he went, I followed him. I learned from him. He taught me what could be taught in a university for maybe 10 years. In 2 years, 1 year, he carried no books. When he taught Upanishads came from his head. When he taught the Gita, it came from his head. So in those 3 years, I would say it was kind of a crash course for me.
I would love for you to talk a little bit about the 3 years, sir.
Many things happened, but the main thing was I started to discover that this man was not an ordinary man. Sometimes before I could think of something, he would know what I was going to think. Because all the scriptures which I learned, the Vedic and the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras and the he was also a Nathpanthi, so the teachings of Gorakhnath, Goraksha Shataka, Siddha Siddhanta Paddhati, it was all there for him here. He never carried a book. And I learned from him, and whatever I learned, I never forgot.
I would assume that you all mainly focused on actually practicing some form of Kriya Yoga or just
not
Kriyas.
some form, Kriya Yoga.
Okay.
See, no, Babaji taught me much of the different schools. Like in Indian tradition, we have 5 darshanas. Now, darshanas means schools of philosophy, but the word darshana means face to face. So, whatever school of philosophy, ultimately it was to take you face to face with the truth. That's what all the darshanas are about. There is Sankhya, there is Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, Nyaya, Vedanta, and of course yoga. These are all darshanas. So I learned all of them bit by bit, all the texts that were necessary to understand.
But why did you learn all of them?
Because Babaji said, tomorrow you will be given a teaching assignment and you should know everything, because people who come to you will become different fields. You will meet swamis, yogis, different scholars. You need to know what they're saying. So I went through all this, but my practice was Kriya.
Are you comfortable explaining what Kriya is to the audience?
Very much. I can't give Kriya in this kind of word, but the word Kriya in the Shastras, in the Yoga Shastras, simply means a practice. Kriya. Practice. What Kriya is? Yoga Shastras, innumerable Kriyas. Pastrika is a Kriya. Shambhavi is a Kriya. Anulom Vilom is a Kriya. Mahamudra is a Kriya. These are all different. When I say Kriya, I'm talking about that particular set of Kriya teachings that has come to us from Sri Guru Babaji. Not my master, but his master.
That person?
Now that is a picture, I think, drawn by Yogananda Paramahamsa's brother, based on Yogananda Swami's description. So, it was Yogananda Paramahamsa who first coined the word Mahavatar Babaji, because he said many avatars have come and gone, but this person is there for a long, long time. He's supposed to be there till the end of the Kali Yuga, which we are only halfway through Kali Yuga now.
This is your guru's guru.
Yes. So, Maheshwarnath, he was also Lahari Mahashaya's guru.
Mahavatar Babaji you're talking about.
So, but for 1,000 years, he has been referred to, before the Yogananda Swami's book came out, as Sri Guru Babaji. Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha is the mantra we use for him. And when Gorakhnath, the great Gorakhnath, wrote his text, he always started with Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Then you will find them as Sri Nityanataya Namaha, which means the Nath who lives forever, which is Sri Guru Babaji. So in many traditions, he is known as Sri Guru Babaji. And so when I talk about Kriya, it's that Kriya that has come to us from that lineage. But there may be other Kriyas.
Was that his purpose? Mahavatar Babaji's purpose?
Yes, of course.
To bring back Kriya.
Yeah, because see, it's a very step-by-step, systematic, methodical way of transcending the ordinary.
To make it simpler for listeners who've not heard of Kriya Yoga before, it's supposed to be one of the fastest forms of spiritual advancement.
Now, that depends also on other factors. If I say I live my life as I want and then if I do, no, that doesn't work. You have to follow the Yama Niyamas, rules and regulations, and then practice. And also it depends on how much you practice and how diligently you practice and how carefully you practice. That is also there. Just because carefully means making sure that you do it regularly, making sure that you don't miss the points which are described to you. It's simply that you take Kriya is of no use. As the Yoga Sutras say, Nairantarya Abhyasena, regular practice is necessary before things can open up. So what Kriya does, basically it's a way of erasing your awareness from the gross to the subtle with attention to the spine, which is called the Sushumna Nadi.
What does gross to the subtle mean?
That means the mind is usually caught up in what we call Prithvi Tattva, which means the gross forms of energy, physical, and so on. You have to raise the mind from that to subtler and subtler levels, which means to take your awareness through different parts of your spine. The spinal cord, the Sushumna Nadi, which it's called, then the mind becomes finer and finer and finer till it finally figures out the origin of this whole substance called the human.
So you've been practicing for a very long time now.
Yes.
What is your reality now in the moment after so many years of practice?
For me, now I practice because I enjoy it. I don't practice it for anything else. I enjoy practicing. But what it has done to me is it has opened up many dimensions to my mind. It has taken me from the mind can be at a given moment shifted from the lower to the higher levels
At will.
at will of consciousness.
When you say higher levels, do you mean closer to God?
No, from the Indian system of thought, when the mind is free of all vrittis, that mind reflects divinity. And divinity is not something that sits out there like the God concept in Semitic religions. It's the spark of the divine that exists in us. This is God. It's not some outside thing. The entire universe, which is pervaded by the Supreme Being, but it is recognized in the human being as the core of one's own consciousness, in one's own being. This is the Jiva. This is God. It's not something outside.
Do you believe in higher beings?
Yes, I do.
You believe in higher beings?
Yes.
And I ask you this because the podcasting community talks about these things all over the world.
I don't believe in higher beings. I know that higher beings exist.
What is the meaning of
What
higher
I
beings?
believe means I don't know, I believe. For me, it's not a belief. Higher beings, there are many kinds. First of all, it is so funny to think that in this earth there are only human beings. It's very limited way of thinking. There are other beings. We don't see them, doesn't mean that they don't exist. We don't see the air, but it exists. So there are. Now we are talking, right? We're talking about something serious, and it is going to lead to so many people understanding certain things. Believe me, there are these beings around, encouraging, hoping, helping, saying, push, let it go to the world. You may not see it. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. And it is not necessary to see.
So, in terms of an ant, I don't know if an ant actually has the same kind of perception that we do as human beings, but an ant certainly can't jump.
True.
It moves only in like straight lines.
Right.
So I've often wondered, even as a kid, that what is the perception of that ant?
Yes.
When we can move straight, sideways,
So
and
it doesn't
jump.
understand. Suppose you jump and go from here to there, the ant cannot make out that. It's a miracle for the ant because it knows only the linear directions.
So we are the higher being for the ant.
In relation to, not ant, let's say some other small creatures. And therefore, for the higher beings, we in our undeveloped state are like the ant.
Okay.
It's difficult to conceive even what it is all about.
Where would you even begin this conversation of higher beings? Would you put ghosts in that category? What people reference as ghosts?
No. See, ghosts are generally they come out of one's imagination. Let me put it this way. The human body has electricity. It has, because there are chemicals, there are metals, everything. Now, generally when a person grows old and dies, all this electricity slowly fades off and it's gone. Suppose somebody dies in an accident. Suddenly, what happens to the electric charges? Forget the soul, that's gone. What happens to the electric charges which were in this body and which, because they remained in this body, have acquired a certain shape just like this body? What happens? They are released. That is released. And it is wandering around. You can't see it, and under special circumstances it may be visible. Since for a long time it was inside this body, it will have the same shape and people will say there is a ghost. Over time that will disappear because that charge will be lost. But believe me, it has no intelligence of its own. It cannot hurt you because it can hurt you by fear, of course. You get frightened and you get a heart attack. That's not the fault of that wraith, whatever is there. It's the charge that has left the human body because suddenly somebody died while still everything was fresh. But the soul is not there in that. Soul is gone.
What about people who get possessed by these things?
I think 90% of possession is a psychological disease. There is no such person. In rare cases, it may be, but it's not these electrical charges that can possess. In rare cases, other beings are known to have occupied physical bodies.
And these are not necessarily ghosts. These could
No,
be demonic entities.
No, they
Then-
need not be demonic. They can be good in entities also. You see, when we say invisible, we always put it into the demonic category. There may be good and there may be bad in it.
So there are higher beings around us or different beings which are also good
Yes, of course. They are good. Now here there are good.
right now.
I'm telling you, because,
In this house.
because they are encouraging us. So now, wait a minute. Now let me tell you this. Which is why when you sit down and pray, you meditate, sometimes you feel good because they are helping you. Sometimes you don't feel because they are doing something else. So there are beings. There's no question. And in fact, if you develop the capacity to see, you may be able to see them also. But for us who are walking on the path to absolute freedom, we don't want to get stuck with these beings. We need to go further up.
What is their purpose? Why are they there?
They are here because, you see, their rate of frequency of vibration of their bodies is different from ours, right? So even if they are here where we are sitting, we don't feel them and they don't feel us because their frequencies are different.
Can they see us? Like if they wish.
Some, not all can see us. Some are unconsciously there, not even aware that we are here, just as we are not aware that they are there. Rare among them might be able to see, like rare among us may be able to see or feel more than see.
Do you feel anything in this house? Just by any chance?
This house, I feel some meditation energies here. Probably because you are meditating or somebody is meditating. And I also see pictures here of the lineage of Lahiri Mahashaya and Sri Guru Babaji. So there are some presences here which are positive. They are not negative presences.
Yeah, yes. I'd love to know about angels, farishte, these things. Are these the higher good beings that you speak of?
True.
So angels are what? God's soldiers?
That is the Semitic narrative of angels. They're not soldiers or anything. They're beings who belong to a different dimension. They will not become human beings, nor will human beings become angels. There are many species of such beings on this earth, not only us, Homo sapiens. And they interpenetrate this world. They're also beyond. There are also beings who come from other realms, which are not of this earth.
Not of this universe or not of this earth?
Sometimes from another universe also.
So many questions I have right now. So, was it your guru who began to teach you these things?
Yes, of course. In fact, when I went, I didn't have much of faith in all these things. I wanted to do Kriya and I wanted to touch the Atman and be free and so on. But he said, but there are many intermediate things between this and that.
Why did you have to learn about these things?
Because they are facts. We need to know them. They exist and sometimes they are very helpful to us. You can always use them for help. And if they are negative, you learn about them. Otherwise, how would you avoid them?
How do you use them for help?
Whenever we sit down and meditate and chant like for instance, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, such chants when you do, then these higher beings who are there to help us, they come and influence our minds and help us to be free of distractions. Things like that. Suppose there is some problem happening because of the negative influence of such kind of being, always invoke the positive so that it takes care of it negates the negative.
These higher beings, why would they even cause negativity to us?
Not the higher good beings. When I say higher, I'm talking about that which is not like physical.
Yeah.
What is beyond the physical, that deliberately will not cause harm to you. But there are like beings who can, for instance, increase your desires. Now, this for a sadhak, for instance, on the path of spiritual is a dangerous thing. So you need to handle it in its own
You
way.
mean like sexual desires?
Yes, and so on.
And so on. Okay.
Wherever there is lot of sexual activity, you find such beings. They're not bad per se, but there are those who encourage you to carry on with it because they live by it. They enjoy it.
Like a bad college friend, bad influence college
Exactly.
friend.
But they're good fellows. I mean, in the sense, by their own, they are okay. But for us who are walking on a different direction, they may be taking you off.
Yeah. Gotcha. Just a little naughty elements around you.
That's right. And you may not even know that normally we dismiss it as thoughts, but we don't understand that these thoughts could have been infused by someone.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about thoughts not being a property of just your own mind.
No. Thoughts, as far as, see, I go to a function, I'm giving you a simple example, and somebody is lecturing there, talking, like what Hitler used to do. Then he goes raving in the end. All attention is there, right? Then there is the playing of drums, and there is the music playing, and there is a flag up. Your thought is no more yours. It's been taken over. This is what I mean.
Or circumstances? Maybe circumstances are put into your life.
Also. Partly circumstances also can take over and change your thinking. Sometimes you may be thinking something which was never part of your psyche. It may be coming from somebody else or somewhere else.
Okay.
That is why when you sit down to meditate, traditionally they draw a protective circle, which is a mind circle, of course. There's nothing material there. And say, please keep away thoughts from us so that we can meditate. In temples, when you see those grotesque figures standing at the gates, the Dwarapalakas, they are supposed to be symbols of those keeping away evil things.
Okay. Coming back to the story, sir. You know what's happening right now? Some of my questions, which I find very easy to shoot with in podcasts, are getting erased and like we're coming back to the story. So for some reason, something's telling me to come back to the story.
Something is at work.
Yeah, like I actually had a great ghost related question, but I think we'll end that tangent for now. What happened in those 3 years? In terms of, I wish to know, other than like the studies, what was your life like, sir? Because I'm assuming you were 20 years old, 21 years old at the most.
19, 20, 21, 22, where we had to go and beg for food from the villagers. Had an advantage because Babaji was known in that area to be a great yogi. So wherever he went, food was provided. But we also gone to places where there was no food available. Babaji could manage without food for days, but he was very careful about me. You'd always used to manage somehow to get food for me. So, and once you are not hungry, if the hunger side is looked after, the Himalayan area is the most beautiful place to be in.
Are there parts of the Himalayas not explored by humans?
I wouldn't say not explored by humans, but there are parts which are not in the tourist circuit.
And which may not be in the tourist circuit.
Some humans have gone. Yeah, I'm sure.
And what do you see in those parts?
You see such places where you have herbs which grow, which can keep your hunger at bay for a long time. You see such beautiful streams with clear water flowing, which has herbs already infused in the water. You sometimes see great yogis, unknown. In fact, after that, I discovered that there are more unknown great yogis than the known ones. Seriously. We know only the known ones, and we think they are great. There are unknown ones who are greater than anything that you can think of.
Mahayogis, as they call.
Great.
Is it true that there are certain kriyas and certain yogas that actually change your physical appearance heavily?
Yes.
What happens?
The cells start changing. The human cells begin to change. They get filled with more energy, which is normally not available to the human being. So they change. Even physically, a Kriya Yogi he may look similar to others, but there will be some change in him. which people can make out when they meet, when they talk. There's something about this guy which is uncanny. It's because it's not a deliberate thing. As you practice Kriya, the cells get charged with energy. And therefore, they are no longer like an ordinary cell.
What I've understood from a slightly scientific perspective is that your breathing becomes slower and deeper. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, your breathing becomes slower and deeper, but also the prana, the life energies which are usually not released from the centers called the plexuses, they get released. That's also there.
So your body holds energy in these packets,
Yes.
which gets opened up,
And
everybody's got those energies as well,
yes,
waiting to be opened up.
exactly.
Which is why I will now ask you about what Kundalini is. I have never asked this on the show. And I know it was an area of interest when you were young, and it's been an area of interest throughout your life, of course. But if someone's never heard of the word Kundalini, I would love for you to explain it, sir.
I avoid this word Kundalini because today it's a very exploited term. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry is raising his Kundalini for $500 today. If you go onto the internet, that's not Kundalini, it's something else. I don't know what it is. Now, what is the meaning of the word Kundalini? Kundalini, Kula Kundali, it's called in the Tantras. Now, the Tantras have two sections. One is the Mantrayana section, it's dealing with mantras where Sri Vidya and so on comes. The Yoga Tantras are those which deal with this energy in the human body. Now, what does it mean? The entire energy of the universe, which is complete, Purna. Parashakti is the word used by the Shaktas. This, and it is feminine. Creative energy is always depicted as feminine. So this Parashakti, after having done all its work, in the human being, where does it operate? First, it operates as sex. The sex and Kundalini are interrelated. It is the same energy, but in a different way. So, Kundalini, you don't want to, as a Shakti, is also called Bhujangi because it's like a snake. In the sense, there is no snake there, but it's coiled. And it raises its hood, meaning it awakens. This energy, through sex, creates another human being. It's a creative energy, right? So what happens in sex? The semen goes into a woman's womb, and then a new being is created. This is created by the same energy which we call Kundalini, acting through sex. Which is why somewhere people have got this connection between sex and Tantra, which of course has been exploited beyond recognition. Now, this energy, after having made a child, doesn't dissipate. It stays. Where does it stay? In the bottom of the spine, in the center called the Muladhara.
Your lowest chakra.
Lower center. Lowest not in the sense of low and high, but in the bottommost.
Physically.
Physically low. Yes. So it stays there. And whenever a person has a sexual excitement or enjoyment, it is the same energy that operates. Now the yogi, what he does is, instead of allowing it to express itself too much in the sexual field, he controls it and turns it around and makes it ascend the spine. When it ascends the spine, then the Kundalini or the Shakti, whatever you want to call Bhujangi, becomes a spiritually creative energy, just as it becomes a physically creative energy through sex.
How do you turn it around?
Kriya is one of the practices meant to turn it around from the Yoga Tantra point of view. There is another Shastra which is called the Mantrayana Tantra, which is Sri Vidya Upasana. Through Sri Vidya Upasana, some sounds are used and chanted to awaken it. But the best thing is a judicious combination of both.
And what is a fair amount of time if you're disciplined and dedicated to the process?
Now, this is a very difficult question to answer because it all depends on what um,
Stage of growth your soul
growth
is at.
you are and what you have come with from the past. Depends on these factors. But I think so, therefore, you can't fix a fair amount of time in that kind of way. But I think that diligent practice with the understanding that you need to rise above the ordinary can help you to go there. But it's very difficult to fix. Some people happens fast and some people it takes some time. The idea is not to give up.
Mm. Because it'll carry on into your next birth.
Yes, and also I feel it's better that it goes slowly and matures rather than suddenly happens, because the energy is so powerful that there are cases when it has suddenly happened and the body and the mind is not able to cope with it and people become somewhat semi crazy.
When you say crazy, what happens?
Suddenly there's a spurt of energy which they don't know how to place, how to control. They sort of behave in strange ways.
And maybe some people might consider them to be possessed when this is
Yes,
happening.
possible. Or mad. They're not actually mad. They're seeing things and hearing things and going with because something has happened in them. So I think the best thing is that it happens in a slow pace till the whole mind and body becomes mature to take the impact of the arousal. That's why I'm very concerned when people give techniques without preparing the person properly. I'm very concerned. And because I get people writing to me on mail, email, and so on, saying, I went to so and so, somebody. He taught me this, and now what has happened? My whole body is shaking. Something is going up my spine. I can't eat and drink. I'm suffering. Please help me. Now, I always tell them, look, you have to go back to that person and ask, what did you learn? What did you teach? And he should be able to help you. Then they say he's unreachable. If he's unreachable, then what kind of a teacher are you? So, you know what I'm trying to
You
say.
need a stable, experienced guru to teach you these things.
You need a stable person to teach one thing. Second is you should follow through if you taught somebody something.
Hmm.
Because it's unexplored territory largely. And you don't know where the pitfalls are. The poor guy doesn't know. So you need to. So I do it very carefully. I don't generally easily give to people. Not because I'm trying to hide it. It's for their own good.
So is your Kundalini rising the same as you getting enlightenment? Is it the same, or moksha or nirvana, or are they two different things?
According to the Yoga Shastras, generally, Kaivalya or moksha happens when the energy has risen and gone to the Sahasrara. However, I feel and I know that there are cases of people who do not practice Kriya Yoga or who don't practice Kundalini Yoga in particular, who have also become illumined. But it has happened without their conscious effort.
Without their conscious effort. So just happened.
Happened because their mind has become so purified and over many lives they've been working towards it. They don't need to go through this process. But it has awakened in some centers. It may not have gone through the usual yogi course from Muladhara to the Sahasrara. There are cases of people for whom suddenly the energy has opened up in the heart center. They suddenly feel that all the bliss and feelings and energies and thoughts and attention has come to, for instance, the anahat
In their heart chakra.
hearts, and there is a great amount of bliss. They don't know anything about the Muladhara, nothing. It suddenly come. So there are such cases also who have not systematically done the kriya, but who have touched that by finding out their true identity by asking questions like, who am I? Am I this body or am I something else? And then it can happen.
So who am I? Am I this body? Okay, just no, I'm kidding. It's a joke.
I know. You know, who am I? It's a very funny thing because there was this great Ramana Maharshi
Yeah.
who discovered, well, you must remember that at the age of 14, he already had a spiritual experience. We say he didn't do any sadhana, but he must have done sadhana in his previous lives, and he was born a prodigal guy, as a prodigal child. So at the age of 14, he had an experience where he saw that he was not the body. He was separate from the body. So he said, if I am separate from the body, then who am I really? Am I this body or the mind or something? And he attained, I cannot deny at all that Ramana Maharshi had touched the highest without going through any Kundalini, nothing. But then people don't look at his past life. I have not seen his past life, but don't look at that concept of that he must have worked towards it, and that at this young age he got this experience. And then all his sadhana was to consolidate it. 3-4 years he just consolidated. Now, this being the case with Ramana Maharshi, it need not be the case with everybody. So if simply somebody sits down and keeps saying, who am I, who am I, who am I? Do you think one can find the truth? I mean, it's a chant. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a repetition.
Is it true that if in your heart you have the true and unfiltered desire for a guru, the guru will come to you?
For me, I can only say about myself, 100% as far as I am concerned. I wanted a teacher and the teacher came to me.
They say the teacher appears when the student is ready, but the student also needs to want it.
Yes, very much. If you are at a place where you say, if I don't get a proper guide, I'm going to die. Definitely there's a teacher, but it must be very sincere and one pointed towards that.
Can a teacher also leave?
Yes, if his function is over, he can leave.
And you think gurus change over the course of your life?
They could. You can change. There is no harm in that. If somebody says, oh, you shouldn't go away from me, hold on to me. It doesn't make sense to me. I tell people, if you want to go somewhere, please go. Provided it helps. I am also not against directing somebody to go somewhere else.
Okay. Little bit early on the show, we spoke about dimensions. One thing I've understood about the word Shiva and not the god Shiva is that Shiva is referenced to as the dimension beyond human understanding.
Absolutely.
I wish to ask you what that even means, because it's beyond my understanding. Like, what are the dimensions out there? There's 3 dimensions, X, Y, Z, the 4th dimension of time. And that's where my mind stops, because science hasn't understood even time yet. Time is just a convenience in mathematical equations.
Right.
And I've asked some incredibly intelligent astrophysicists, shout out to Abhijit Chavda, but I've asked some incredibly intelligent astrophysicists, and even they have failed to truly understand what time means.
No, they don't. Nobody knows what time is.
Maybe let's begin there. So let's begin talking about time, and then you can dial it up and take us on the 5th and 6th dimensions.
No, let me start with this thing about dimensions.
Okay, wherever you wish, sir.
And Shivam. The word Shiva, Shivam. You know that Shiva is a very abstract concept. It's not the Shankara that we put in a picture of somebody sitting in Siddhasana and with his eyes closed. But even in that picture, it is the symbol of a yogi. Therefore, the yogi only can understand the fulfillment of the word Shivam. Now, in the diagram of Shiva, you always see a third eye. What does that mean? That means to understand the concept which is beyond the ordinary dimensions, one needs to have a special faculty. And that faculty is symbolically called the third eye. There is nothing here. It's symbolical, which means that with our present set of sense organs, which are our instruments of perception, you cannot discover anything which is beyond the third dimension. So, therefore, only when these come into play, when your other sensory perceptions open up, which are beyond the ordinary, then only you can even begin to have an idea of what the next dimension is all about. And Shivam is the ultimate essence of all dimensions put together. This is the word Shivam. Shivam in Sanskrit means bliss, it means auspiciousness, it means the supreme. All 3 words put together. So, therefore, Shiva is sometimes depicted also as Ardhanarishwara, half male and half female. What does it mean? It means that Shakti, the energy, and Shivam, the ultimate tranquil state, are not 2 different things, but 2 sides of the same coin. When everything is quiet as the state of Shiva exists, there is no creation, there is no movement. It's only when there is a movement that the whole thing happens. That movement is Shakti. Right? So, what I'm trying to say to your question is that unless and until we awaken the other instruments of perception in our system, we can only theorize about that which is beyond the three dimensions. We cannot even understand. You told me about the ant thing, a very good example. Let me give you another example. There is a plastic transparent box in which is divided vertically. Top is open, divided vertically with another transparent wall. This side there are small wafer thin red beings, let's say. This side small wafer thin green beings. They know only two dimensions, which is this way or this way. They are so thin, they don't even know that there is any thickness. Okay. Now they have seen that the other side looks more beautiful and more green than this side. They would very much like to go there. But they cannot because they don't know how to go. There is a wall in the middle. The concept that they can go like this doesn't arise in their minds. They are only in that dimension. But they see that some have reached there. How did they reach there? We would also like to go. So they attempt to move and press and press. Some of them realize that this is not going to work. So they sit down quietly in one corner. That's when somebody picks them up and puts them this side. When they're moving, you cannot even pick them up. I don't know. So what I'm trying to say is one way of reaching out to that dimension, which you cannot go because you are not accustomed to anything beyond three dimensions, is to sit quiet and still.
Meditate more.
Still. When the stillness happens, then you're lifted from some dimension, ordinary, and put to something else. Because this is not linear. Like the truth is there or something is there, the other dimension is there, and I'm here and I want to reach that. It doesn't work that way because it is here, there, and everywhere. So how do I experience? By not reaching out anywhere. But everything is quiet.
Stay where you are and work your perception to be
yes.
At a higher place.
Yes. This will take us slowly to the understanding, at least, to begin with in the mind, about something which is beyond the three dimensions.
What is time, sir? What was happening 50 years back, is it also happening now?
Time is based on change. I'm not talking from the physics point of view. Practical point of view, time depends on change. If there was no change, you cannot reckon time. Everything is same. There is no time. Okay, one. Second, time is a very relative and psychological concept also. Even though the watch may show 1 hour in the same time. If this conversation was boring, one would be wondering, when is this going to end? Such a long time has been going on. This may be the same, mechanical time. Suppose it is interesting. When it is over, I would say, oh my God, it's ended. That was very short. So is time just a physical thing or is it also psychological? Plus, creatures like a mosquito, for instance, we say that it lives for 2 days. But for the mosquito, it's not 2 days. This mosquito was born, then it became like a worm, then it shed its tail and it grew wings and it became a mosquito, and then it looked for food, it drank our blood or whoever's blood, and then it reproduced, it had a family and so on, and then it died 2 days later. 2 or 3, I don't know what the lifespan is. For us it is 2 days and 3 days. For the mosquito, believe me, it's an entire lifetime. Where is this time now? Which is time, this or this? So, time measured in physical ways is one thing, and time actually is another thing altogether. So it's very linked to your psychology, to your mind.
What is its purpose Like, why did God place this element of
It's
time?
not God. See, like saying, what is gravity and why is it there? It is there.
Hmm.
You can only accept it. You cannot even try to find a reason for it.
If time is the fourth dimension, what is the fifth one? Like, what's the next one? I'm sure we graduate
I
at least
haven't
numerically.
thought about this.
Okay.
But I think time is not the next dimension. Going beyond time is the next dimension.
Let's talk about that, sir.
When I say going beyond time, first to theoretically accept that time is a psychological factor.
How do you go beyond it? What does that even mean? Do you mean like freezing time?
No, understanding time. Understanding what is time. Through understanding, then the time disappears. Then you understand that this time which we know of by the clock is not the real time. And we think that this life is birth and death. We're born and we die. But I know many yogis also know for certain that this is not neither the beginning nor the end of our life. It's going on from the beginning, for nobody knows even the origin actually. Nobody, even the yogi doesn't know where it originated, but it is going on continuously. And it will continue till we put a stop to it.
Till we put a stop to it.
Yes, when we realize that this is endless and it's useless, we don't want to come all the time and say, okay, cease, enough. Then only you can put a stop to it, otherwise you cannot put a stop.
What do you think is the future of the human race?
I think human race has to evolve further. It has still come to a point, we think they are in the highest level of evolution, and now an artificial intelligence comes. I think we are still in the, what you call the, this lobe of the brain, the frontal lobe civilization. We need to go beyond it. The human race cannot just stand here. It needs to move further.
While we're speaking about the brain, let's talk about the pineal gland, sir. What the West understands as the third eye. Firstly, is it the third eye? Are there capacities in our mind that get unlocked specifically because of the pineal gland? And I don't know if you're familiar with DMT. I would love to hear what you think of these concepts, because that's how the West understands enlightenment. Ayahuasca, if you've heard of it. I would love to know what you think, sir.
I would personally, let me start with this, not appreciate anybody getting stuck to ayahuasca or any such kind of thing, because temporarily, yes, it makes you understand that there are things which are not known to the ordinary mind. Yes, but that's where it stops. If you need to develop, you need to develop your brain cells to that level, which means you need to do other practices, including Kriya, of course. Now, as far as the pineal gland is concerned, I know that there is a lot of, everybody is talking about pineal gland now. It's as if pineal gland is the spiritual organ. Let me put it this way. Till 60, 70 years ago, the pineal gland was considered to be a vestige organ.
Like the appendix.
Then, sometime before, later, people discovered that no, it has a very important function, which the biologists call the circadian rhythm, the sleep and waking cycle. It is the pineal gland. When everything is dark and there's good music, then the pineal gland injects a little bit of melatonin into our bloodstream and we feel nice. When we say we are in good meditation, it means some hormone is injected into our bloodstream, DMT or some other hormone. I can't remember the names, and so we feel good. So that is also quite chemical in content. Now, through yoga, you can make it happen deliberately and consciously.
That's all the time.
Yeah, that's one side of the story. Now, therefore, if the pineal gland or melatonin, when you have a jet lag, doctor asks you to take melatonin, which is the same thing produced by the pineal gland. Now, if it really, if it's a fact that it produces sleep, it has something to do with sleep. Now, in Vedanta, go to the Mandukya Upanishad. The states of consciousness of the human being have been described as waking state, dream state, deep sleep, and something beyond, which is called Turiya. Now, Deep sleep is the last state that has been discussed and described because cannot be defined. And pineal gland and melatonin has something to do with sushupti or deep sleep. The borderline between deep sleep and turiya is very thin. So, when the difference between turiya and sushupti or deep sleep is just that in sushupti, one has no recognition outside and no cognition inside. But one is apparently in great deal of bliss. Because nobody wants to wake up from deep sleep because we are enjoying. But while we are enjoying deep sleep, we are not aware of it, right? Only when we wake up, we feel, that was such a blissful sleep. But if we feel it now and remember it, that means somebody was actually experiencing that bliss. So in that deep sleep state, if one can, practical power is not possible, but if can theoretically wake up, then from deep sleep one has entered Turiya. And what is Turiya? It's all pervading state of blissfulness, which everybody is aiming to get at.
God.
God you can call, if you like.
It's like an ocean of God.
Ocean of awareness and bliss. Okay. So the thin line between, therefore, attention in the pineal gland and meditation on that area around it can probably take us from deep sleep into Turiya. This is where it becomes important. I also think that it can be controlled by mind.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's even though it is an organ which is deep inside the brain, it can be made to increase or decrease its level of hormone release into the brain stream, into the bloodstream through thought.
Through visualization?
Visualization, attention, one-pointed attention, calming the mind and equalizing the breath. The oldest reference to Kriya comes in the Gita. In the 6th chapter of the Gita, which is called Dhyana Yoga, Krishna says, Arjuna, sit straight, keep your spine and head steady. Fix your attention in the Bhrumadhya, the center between your eyebrows, which is what takes you to the inside to the pineal gland. Then balance your breath, which is Kriya, and be free.
It's a simple meditation you've just given out, sir.
No, seriously, it's from the Gita. Krishna beautifully describes it. He says, sit steady, keep your spine steady, head steady, neck steady. Okay. Now, fix your attention in the Bhrumadhya. Equalize your breath and go out and be free. Reach Kaivalya, the word used there.
So I think we began this podcast based on your story, and we've gone very far away from it.
True.
But I love podcasts like this. This is where the real joy of podcasting comes into play. There has been one particular topic that people have been very inclined towards on the internet lately, which is the Yeti. And under every video we've ever created about Yetis, your name comes up.
Is it?
Yes. Why is that?
Simply because I happened to mention that when I wanted to go to Kailash, it was an unsuccessful attempt. Babaji said, okay, chalo. So we didn't go through the usual route, any of the routes that are being used now. The route was completely different. Nobody goes nowadays through that route. We went through the Indo-Tibetan border into Kakabushundi and all these kinds and crossed across. We came to a village where there is a Tibetan Buddha which is so huge that its head is above the roof. And there we stopped for the night. Beyond that I couldn't because I got high fever. My temperature rose and I was delirious and so on. So there were some Nepalese people walking with us. They were the fellows who used to cook. There were some other merchants also with us. And these fellows. So I was inside the tent and I was sleeping. I woke up. I woke up because I suddenly found that my temperature has gone down and I was feeling slightly okay. And I'm thinking, where am I? I even forgot. I said, where am I? Where is Babaji? nowhere to be seen, and I was lying in the bed. It's dark. The only lamp was the kerosene lantern they have inside. Then I suddenly thought somebody was. I thought it was the Nepalese guy who was bringing my soup or something. Somebody came in. Something came in, and I was astonished. I was not suffering from any delusion. It is not delirium. There was a huge person standing there. And with the light of that lantern, I could hardly see much, but I knew that it is a furry kind of person. The first doubt was that it is a bear, but no, it was standing like a human being. I couldn't see the features much, but it came near me and it made a very eerie noise, like I don't know how to. It's like a whistle, but it's not. I don't know that kind of. No, no,
Okay.
it's actually E sound, kind of E sound. And then it took something and put it into my mouth, stuffed something into my mouth. It was a bitter thing. I couldn't spit it out. I swallowed it. And it ran off. By the time that Bahadur came running inside, and this one went out. This I mentioned in my autobiography, which is why this Yeti thing keeps coming. And later on, I even thought it was some kind of a Himalayan ape or something. Babaji told me later on that it was an Yeti. And he said, you would have died with this fever. I said, but I had recovered. He said, no, it would have come again for 8 days. It is some kind of a mountain fever, which usually takes the person at the end. He said, this Yeti, he said, they are good people. They are not what people think and fear. He brought a herbal medicine and stuffed it into your mouth. Otherwise, you would have died. And third day, we returned.
Do you remember the face?
It was dark. There was only that hurricane lamp there at low flame. I can't exactly remember the face, but I can tell you it was broader and bigger than a human face. This much I can tell you.
Were you scared at all?
I was scared. Of course I was scared. I couldn't scream because I got so scared that the sound stuck in my throat. I couldn't even scream. But before that, all this was done. Split second, kind of.
What energy did you feel from it?
I didn't feel anything. I think I smelled something like, suppose some furry animal like a dog comes near, that kind of smell. Beyond that, I didn't feel it.
What do you think is the Yeti's purpose?
Babaji said he came to help you. Beyond that, I don't know.
No, generally, like Yetis generally, why do you think they're there?
I don't know. I've not even thought about it because this is the first time and the last time I had an experience. But from this, I came to understand that there are such living creatures in the remote parts of mountains and caves and forests, which we don't believe because we don't see them so often.
Yeah. And people underestimate how big mountains and forests are.
Very big. We don't know a thing. Nothing to compare with any of the national forests that we have. There are many unknown places.
While I do wish to ask you everything else about your lifestyle, I know we're constrained a little bit with time, which is why I'm going to bring in a question sent in by my uncle. He has read all your books, and I said that, is there something you really wish for me to bring up as a great introductory aspect of Shri M to the audiences? He said, I would love to know a little bit more about the Nagas and, what they were, who are they, what was their purpose?
This is some chapter which I am very reluctant to open up, but the Nagas that we have today, I'm talking about the hooded serpents, not the unhooded serpents.
Cobras?
Cobras, the hooded cobras that we have, especially the scissor mark guys. They are a kind of, I don't know what word to use. Once upon a time, they belonged to a species of beings that lived in another realm altogether. In ancient times, they were our teachers. They taught us many things, the Nagas, which is why the Nagas are worshipped as symbols of wisdom. Even the Kundalini is considered to be Naga. What we have today is a totally what do you call it? There's some word for it. I'm sorry, I don't get.
Like a reduced version?
But not reduced. Like decadent. Decadent is the word I was looking for. A decadent leftovers of that species which we have today. Because other Nagas have all disappeared. They've gone back to their realms. The reason why they become decadent is because then they started having relationship with human beings. So they were recalled. And those who were left behind is what we see today as the species of serpents, the cobras.
What do you think the intelligence of a cobra is? Is it beyond what we know?
The cobras that we have today are not that intelligent as their forefathers who were our teachers. But they are definitely more intelligent than we think, as a normal snake. The unhooded snake, for instance. Now, this is controversial. If I say this, the biologists will say this is not true. Yeah, but we know that the cobras, one thing I can tell you, to my understanding, the cobras do not bite unless they think they're threatened. Now, listening to music and shaking is not real because cobras do not hear. They only pick up vibrations from the ground. They cannot hear. They don't have ears, instruments. But they can sense the rhythm. Okay. Now, one thing I have noticed also is that cobras recognize somebody in whom the Kundalini is active.
Are you comfortable just talking about where the ancestors have gone? They've just
Back to
gone back.
Nagaloka. Is in their realm called Nagaloka, where they have gone back, and I had an encounter in which I really saw somebody from there in the Arundhati cave.
But they come back to visit.
Very rarely. This was a very rare instance. They don't. Generally not.
Okay. Without delving too much into details, sir, after your 3 years with your guru, why did you come back?
Babaji said, go back. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come back. I would have stayed quietly there. I was very happy. I told Babaji, I don't want to go and get stuck. He said, no, it's your plan in life to teach is to go back, get married, settle down, and teach. Because I want you to know what the ordinary human being goes through. Without that, you won't be able to teach. So you have to go through it, go back. And also he told me not to teach till I got a green signal from him. So I never taught for many years. Many years I listened to what others are saying and kept quiet and did not teach a word till the age of 42.
But you were practicing your Kriya.
Yes, of course. And day by day it was expanding the mind.
Were you also learning more in those years?
I was just learning what I had already learned. I was relearning it to make it more clear when I tell other people, because I knew at some point I will have to teach. I was preparing myself actually.
Your purpose in this life is to just relay the information that you have gained?
Purpose in this life is to make people understand that in every living being, especially in a human being, because human beings can recognize it, other living beings cannot, that there is a divine element in all living beings, in all human beings. And that divine element is the essence of our being. And if you turn our mind round and look, if you find it, that is the aim of life. To take the human from the ordinary to that which is beyond. This is my aim in life.
Yes, sir. Thank you for this conversation. I think we're at the end of it, sir. Genuinely hope to have many, many more conversations with you, because
I'm quite comfortable with you, so that we'll see some other time we can have
I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable in any part
In
of
any
this.
case, I don't get uncomfortable, but I find something okay with it. There's no problem.
Thank you, sir. One last question before I let you leave, which is any piece of advice for me personally?
Continue with what you're doing, because while you also have discussions with people from all wakes of life, all kinds of people. But while doing that, please keep this in mind that the spiritual aspect is a very important part of life. And when it goes from young people like you, other young people will get interested in it and try to, because the ultimate aim of life is to expand spiritually. So while you may be doing other things, keep this definitely this part of it going all the time, because you will become more and more famous. I know it. As it becomes and as it expands, don't miss the spiritual part of it.
Shriyam, so thank you. I don't know what to say other than just
Thank you.
thanking you.
Thank you very much for bringing it out from me, because I'm generally sometimes quite reluctant to discuss. Thank you to bring it out in a very friendly, nice way.
I mean, I hope the audience has listened to this particular episode very intently, and I hope you'll re-listen to it, because even between the sentences spoken, there was a lot of messages and information. So thank you. I'm hoping to welcome you back on the show soon.
Thank you very much. Namaskar.
When we began recording this podcast, I thought I would cover this entire man's life journey over the course of one episode. And I was wrong. I only got to cover his origin stories and probably the second chapter where he met his guru. Usually in outros, I talk about what a podcast made me feel. In this outro, I just want to welcome Shri M back on the show because we need to hear more about the story. We need to learn more from Shri M. We need to rise along with all this knowledge that's currently rising in the world, all over the world. They say that India is the hub of culture, the hub of spirituality, even when we're talking about the whole world. What I mean by that is the whole world turns to India when it comes to spiritual growth, when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to the deeper meaning of life. And I hope that this podcast helped you find that slightly deeper meaning of life. Do share it with your friends. I know that some of these concepts sometimes can seem too far-fetched for the average listener. But hey, true knowledge is knowing that we know nothing, right? And keeping that in mind, of course, I'm going to ask you to follow us on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This was Shri M appearing only for the first time on this show. So it's promised that he's going to be back soon, and I can't wait to record a sequel episode to this one. In the description box, I have linked Shri M's books. Make sure you check them out. Some of the chapters written by this man will completely twist the way you perceive reality. And I think that the internet has just begun to get to know this legend of our times. This was Shri M on The Ranveer Show.